Bowers Building in accordance with the Open Public Meetings Act, and furnish to all those who have requested the individual notice and have paid the required fee. Roll call.
Mayor Glassman. Here. Ms. Bushman. Here. Councilman Sullivan.
Present.
Mr. Smith.
Here.
Mr. Sprandell. Mr. Durso. Mr. Aguilar.
Here.
Ms. Starbuck. Here. Mr. Molnar. Ms. Trout. Here. Mr. Kay. And Mr. Pace.
Here.
Okay. I'd just like to remind everybody to speak clearly into the microphones. Make sure you're at close proximity so that the recording can be registered. And we are going to table the Thomas Beeman at 465 Cherry Lane application until next month's meeting. So that will not be addressed this evening. And we'll get approval of minutes, but those minutes will be tabled until next month's meeting as well. For the public comment, there's an opportunity for anybody in the public that is not on our agenda or a pending case. If you'd like to come to the microphone and speak of anything like that, you're welcome to come up and state your name, your address, and you're limited to 5 minutes to speak. If you are a registered, okay, at this point I'm going to close the public. And we have on the agenda Lisa completeness, but I think that was for the Thomas Beeman.
Yeah, there's nothing underneath.
Nothing that needs to be completed. So, go right to hearings.
Yes.
Rick?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Can everyone hear me well?
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, public. First of all, my name is Derek Worth from the law firm of Inglesino Taylor. It is a pleasure and an honor to be back before you in beautiful Mendham this evening. First of all, I would like to thank Grace Lutheran Church for accommodating us, and I would like to also thank the board, Lisa, and the administration for making this wonderful space available. We truly appreciate it. We appreciate the church's accommodation for this hearing this evening. As the board is aware, and as the public is aware, I am here representing V. Friedman Apartments on the pending application for preliminary and final major site plan approval this evening. We have conducted 2 hearings on this application so far, and in the course of those 2 hearings, we have gone through some of the testimony of our civil engineer, Afton Savitz. Afton, raise your hand right there. There she is. And we're going to recall her to start out this evening. A couple of notes before we get into the testimony tonight. We have gone through many of the comments and the questions from the board and the public, and we do have some exhibits to show at the start of the evening. Now, I did not direct our team to prepare revised plans because we haven't gotten through the civil plans yet. But we do have some exhibits to show the board to start out with regard to parking, with regard to site ingress and egress that I think would be helpful. Notably, first of all, we reconfigured the parking lot, or we are able to reconfigure the parking lot in front of the shopping center with after 90-degree angle, right?
Correct.
90-degree angle stalls, which would yield an additional 10 parking spaces in front of the shopping center. So that would be one improvement. 2, we are able to also relocate all the dumpsters, which are on Plan East. I think it's East. I know it's plan right of the civil set, so that we have a clear drive aisle of 20 feet along the right-hand side of this project. So we're able to do that. We're also able to create a little bit more parking space, which our engineer, Afton Savitz, is going to cover briefly in her testimony. After she does that and we introduce these exhibits, we're then going to move on to the drainage. And we're going to do, the plan turn or the page turn of this application from there on out. But I just wanted to touch upon that briefly before we get into that, because that's where we're going to start out. So thank you again for your time, your attention, and we look forward to getting into this evening. So let me just introduce my engineer, Afton Savitz. Afton, you've been sworn. You've testified to your credentials already. I'll just remind you, as I know Mr. Germanario would, that you remain under oath why don't you just briefly state your name for the record, and then take us into your first exhibit. Thank you.
Sure. Good evening. Can you hear me?
No?
I think you might have to switch microphones.
We can speak. I speak very loudly.
Yeah,
So-
I think it's better if she speaks into this one.
Why don't you, Afton, why don't you go up here to the main mic, if that's okay? Or, let me do a little test here with the microphone here. Good evening, everyone. Can you hear me? Yes, they can. The lawyer is always the loudest, correct? Okay, thank you. All right, so if you're more comfortable speaking from here, you just have to speak directly into the mic, slowly. I think you can do it. You should do it from there. It's a little bit easier for your presentation. Thank you.
You can take it off of there also, if it's easier to hold, but just hold it close to.
Okay, good evening, everyone. Can you hear me? Great. So Afton Savitz, for the record, last name S-A-V as in violin, I-T-Z.
Thank you, Afton. And you presented at the last two hearings regarding, I think, the first 10 sheets of your civil set. Is that correct?
That's correct. We performed a page turn to date up until grading and drainage.
And why don't we talk briefly about the modifications or the proposed modifications that we have made vis-a-vis exhibits. Mr. Germanario, this would be a new exhibit for the board's consideration before we get into an actual page turn. So why don't you describe if the exhibit is what we're looking at on the screen there? A3. Do we have any additional copies there, After, or we're just going to show it on the board? Okay, Mr. Chairman, we have additional copies that I can pass out for the board's consideration. All right, great.
And we're going to mark it A3.
Yes. I will mark this A3. I'll mark the first set A3. This will be 9/17/24. Okay, Lisa, this is the first set. I'll pass it out to you. And for the public, we're also showing the exhibit on the stand to my right. And also Diane, right? Diane is my wonderful reporter here. She's my transcriber. She's not a stranger. She's here to record the proceedings this evening. So I just ask all my witnesses, and any members of the public who have questions, to speak slowly so she can take it down. Thank you very much. So Afton, we have now marked A3 into the record. Why don't you describe what it is that the board is looking at?
Sure.
You can give it just a second. We've got about another 5 seconds for it to make its round of board consideration. And again, Mr. Chairman, I'm not looking to spend too much time. I mean, obviously we'll spend as much time as the board may desire, but I'm not looking to retread over old ground with the testimony. We just saw an opportunity for improvement to the application that we had submitted, and we wanted to briefly touch on it before we moved on to the next set of sheets in the civil set.
All right, sounds great.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Go ahead, Afton.
Great. So A3 prepared by our office, it is dated September 17th.
Can't hear.
Turn on.
Yes.
Not working.
Let me take a look. Hold on. Hello, hello? Okay. This is not working. Hold on 1 second. How about testing, mic on? The light is flashing red, which is never a good sign. So what I would suggest, Afton, if you can, move to here. I will speak very loudly. The court reporter will be able to hear me. I'm sure my voice will catch on the mic.
Great. So for the record, this is Exhibit A3. It's a 3-page set of documents Again, the purpose to replicate that of the site plan sheet previously submitted. The changes are concentrated on the third sheet, so I will flip to that. Page down.
Afton, you're gonna have to come over here and sit.
Okay, this is the third sheet. It is site plan, in parentheses, retail, sheet 3 of 3, and it is focused on the front area of the development. As we heard through testimony last time and questions both from the board and the public, there were questions regarding the parking supply, the parking access, some safety measures. So as council mentioned, you'll notice in the front of the building of Kings being that rectangular centered space, the parking immediately in front of that has been rotated to be 90 degrees, where previously it was 60 degrees. For this configuration, what that means is the change comes with two-way traffic, where it was previously one-way, and immediately in front of the Kings retail, the parking supply is increasing by 31 spaces, but it's worth noting the 10 spaces council mentioned take into consideration ensuring that all spaces on the property, whether they are retail spaces behind that eastern building, are the minimum 9 by 18 foot space that we're seeking.
And so Afton, there we go. Now this is working really well. Okay, thank you everyone. So Afton, just to recollect the board, we had previously presented parking spaces that were at a 45-degree angle, correct? In front of the shopping center?
They were at a 60-degree angle.
They were at a 60-degree angle. I'm not very good at math. Thank you for that. So they were at a 60-degree angle, and we have now modified them to be at a 90-degree angle, correct?
That's correct.
And we have added now 10 parking spaces in front of the shopping center, correct?
There's a net increase of 10 spaces throughout the property.
And what else have we added to the shopping center in response to a comment from a couple of board members and I think also a member of the public?
Yes, so directly related to the increase in parking supply, there is one added ADA space. It's also worth noting that there are cart corrals. They're centered immediately in front of Kings. You'll notice them by a diagonal dashed line, rectangular in nature, removing 2 spaces next to one another in 2 different locations, adding duplicity or additional places where carts can be stored independent of that is adjacent to the building where it exists today.
So now we have cart corrals in the parking center. We have 10 additional spaces, correct?
That's correct.
And the other major change to the site plans that were previously presented is we have relocated dumpsters, correct?
Correct.
And
So,
those had to do with the eastern drive aisle to the site, correct?
yes.
And walk us through that briefly, thank you.
Sure. So the eastern or the right-hand side of the page, the driveway location that will remain as you travel up the page or in the north direction, parallel to that eastern retail building, you'll notice there's now a square or rectangular area in back of the building. And so what that is doing is it's designating space for all retail trash, refuse to be stored behind the building for collection.
And I'll just walk up here. We're talking about this space right here, correct? Is that
That's
right?
correct.
Okay, so that's the new recyclable trash container, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And so the drive aisle that we have cleared, we have removed the trash containers is right here, correct?
That's correct.
And just to orient the board, this is the parking field that we're talking about, and right here are the 2 cart corrals that we have added, correct?
That's correct.
Okay, wonderful. Now, are there any other major changes to the parking configuration from the center, or can we proceed with the presentation of the civil set?
The only other change, we heard feedback from the public, the board, as it related to traffic up the spine, or that interconnectivity from the south to the north. So we are indicating in that main drive aisle 2 speed, 2 traffic dampening measures.
I'll be your van of white for this evening. This is right here off to my left. Right here we have a raised, what's the
A speed table.
A speed table. There was a concern from the board, correct, Afton, regarding speed measures or traffic control mitigation measures that could be implemented in this drive aisle that comes off of East Main Street and goes all the way back to the center, correct?
That's correct.
And the two things that we have opted to implement, or we have proposed to implement, are one, the speed table right here, correct?
That is one, yes?
Okay, and the other was a speed table right here, correct?
That's correct.
Okay, and this speed table at the top of the page here that I was just pointing to also connects to the pedestrian crosswalk that goes from the shops here to the shopping center, correct?
That's correct.
Okay, and we did that at the suggestion of the board and the public to just create some traffic calming measures, correct?
That's correct.
Okay, now, is there anything else you want to highlight for the board's consideration with regard to this sheet?
The only other thing I'd highlight for the board is that of the mirrored refuse collection for the western building. So similar to that of the eastern building, there is a centralized trash collection immediately north of the western building.
And I'm looking at the plan sheet right here. Is this it right here?
It is correct.
Okay, all right. So we have centralized trash collection containers for the retail buildings in the center, and that has allowed us to free up the ingress and egress routes on the eastern and western side of the center, correct?
Yes, exactly.
Okay, all right. So, Mr. Chairman, that's the brief update on parking, ingress and egress to the center that is new to this application. We will be presenting or submitting a revised civil set, but at my advice, since we're not through the full civil set with the board, I said let's just present some exhibits and get the board's feedback on it.
I just have a quick question.
Yes, sir.
You removed dumpsters from behind those buildings. What is the direction of flow of traffic? Is it going to be two-way direction or one-way?
The eastern driveway will remain two-way. You'll
Okay.
hear additional testimony as it relates to vehicular delivery, but predominantly focused on delivery vehicles, similarly for emergency access and trash refuse.
All right. And what about the west side? That's going to be a one-way?
It will be a one-way, correct?
And that will be a one-way now?
It will be reversed to be an ingress from East Main Street.
Ingress, okay.
I have a question. On the long parking lot, lineup, the ends, those are landscaped ends on them?
Joyce, you need to talk to
I am.
Get a little closer.
In the middle here, Ms.
No, at
Fortune?
the very end.
Right here.
There was landscaping in that parking lot. I'm trying to determine what's happening. At the end, there's like 3 nodes at the very end that are large. Are those landscape areas?
Yes,
Trees
those
or
will be,
concrete?
they will be raised curb islands with plantings.
Okay, and then the long narrow strip that goes up to the 3 at the top, which would be right across from King's, is that just a long concrete strip or is that a landscape? I don't know if that's big enough for any kind of
So
landscape.
the strip, just to confirm that I'm following, you mean where the 2 parking spaces abut one another or face into one another?
Yes.
Yes, so
You have a long, yeah, a double line, it's real skinny.
Right here, right?
Yep.
Yep.
Correct.
Mhm.
yeah, so that will be a 4-foot wide raised island. The intention is similar to what exists today, where you have a paver noting that any,
I can't hear you.
the intention will be similar to what exists out there today, where you have a raised planter area.
Yeah, but I think that one was a little wider, so I'm not sure what you put in a 4-foot strip.
So we you know, the testimony of the last hearing was that people who attended the shopping center, who utilized the shopping center, were simply just putting their carts up onto that island in the center, correct? So what we're doing here is we now provided, okay, folks, all right, okay,
Well,
okay.
I'm fine with what you did with the cart corrals.
Okay, thank you.
But what I'm asking is, if you're going to narrow the strip where it's landscaped to 4 feet, then I think you need to add a landscape island in the middle of those areas. for trees, to break it up.
Okay, so the question,
Otherwise, it's a mass of parking lot that people see, and right now we don't see that.
so Afton, what we'll have to take back for
Do you understand what
consideration.
I'm saying?
Absolutely, right in the spine right here, right, or
No.
this spine right here?
Yeah, but if you go perpendicular, you're gonna eat up a couple spaces, but
Mhm.
I think it would be preferable.
Okay, we're happy to work with the board. I do
Break it up,
understand.
Put a tree in there and some stuff in there, yeah.
We can absolutely work with, and what we'll do after this meeting is we'll confer with Mr. Ferriero on some
All right.
potential additional plantings. And like I said, we did end up with 10 additional parking spaces, so we have some leeway to, to work towards that goal. Thank you.
Thank you.
I have a question. In the last meeting, one of the things that was brought up is the fact that we have a lot of day laborers that come there to get lunch and dinner and have trailers. And so right now they do have parking for truck and trailer. Is that here now? Because I'm not seeing it.
And the parking you're referring to are the parallel spots?
Yes.
So the existing parallel spots are those standard size spots for normal vehicles, whether used by trailers under existing conditions or not. The front area is reconfigured, doesn't have designated spaces for trailers, but vehicles accessing the lot have the optionality to pull to the rear or find an alternative space where open. I know more recently I've been to the property and you do see trailers parking, whether legal or not. There aren't any designated loading spaces for labor with a tractor trailer.
So there, right now there is, but in your plan there is not.
There are no designated spaces for a tractor trailer.
What I would suggest, though, go ahead, Paul, thank you.
It's landscape trailers, it's not tractor trailers. And they're pickup trucks for these trailers that park in the parallel stalls that are in front. And as the engineer testified, they're not set up to be double-length stalls. It just happens to be a pickup truck goes in there and takes up 2 stalls. So that's what's not on this site. And I don't know if there's another place where those over-length stalls could be provided, maybe towards the rear. There's certainly on this layout no place to provide those in the front.
And what I'll say, thank you for that, Paul, and Mayor and Ms. Bushman, if there is a desire for us to provide some sort of a loading stall for that type of use, we can certainly talk about 1 or 2 spots where that might work out. So if the board is inclined to desire that, let us know, and again, we'll work with Mr. Ferriero on updating this set to provide for
Why
that.
don't you find out how many people use it during the day?
I can't, sir, I can only deal with 1 witness at a time.
Hold on.
When your time comes up, you can ask.
Please, the people in the public, keep it down. You'll have your turn after this witness's testimony is done to come up to the podium and speak.
So, Mr. Chairman, that was our presentation on the update to the parking and ingress and egress.
I have one question.
Yes, sir.
I've got a question. It was brought up in the last meeting that the spaces on the west side in front of the retail back out directly into the traffic. You've got 1 lane coming in and 1 lane going out, correct?
That's correct. And you're talking about, I don't know if you can see my finger, but I believe you're talking about the egress road that leads from the back of the apartments down through this drive aisle, correct?
Yes, and that's
Okay.
the main road, right?
We have 15 parking stalls right there.
And that's the main road, right?
To the apartments, correct. It's the main exit road for the apartments.
And entrance too, right?
The entrance is on this side. Well, I don't want to testify. Let my engineer speak to that.
Yes, this is the main drive aisle that takes you from the front of the property to the back of the property. You'll notice there is a change in material with what looks to be a center island, but is actually flush. So if you think about a typical 90-degree parking with 24-foot aisles, in this location you have a 12-foot aisle, a 5-foot flush paver band, and then another 12-foot aisle for a 29 total foot in the middle. So it's acting very similar to a 2-way drive aisle abutting 90-degree parking. There's just the distinguish between material for that entryway.
And so let's just, I'm going to get a little bit more to your question. On the right-hand side of this drive aisle, that's just cars going in, correct?
That's correct.
And on the left-hand side, that's just cars going out, correct?
Yes.
And then we have, what's the distance between the end of the parking stalls and the median there?
To the edge of the median, it's 12 feet.
12 feet, and then the median is what? What's the distance of the median?
It's 5 feet.
So it's 5 feet. So we have a total of 12 feet plus the 5 feet median for cars to back in and out.
Okay.
And they're only going in one direction, sir.
Okay, but they're going in and out in that open, correct? And there's one lane each way, right?
That's correct, sir.
And you're aware that there's now 2 lanes out and 2 lanes in, the way that it's configured today?
That's correct, sir. This would be an improvement to
I'm
that.
not permitted to do that. Yeah. It's a public meeting. I
To go from 2 lanes to 1
By
lane?
law.
I'll let my engineer speak to that.
What do you have to hide?
So to answer the question as it relates to drive aisle width, again, the two-way traffic, the drive aisle width is more than sufficient, 29 feet. You'll hear from the traffic engineer on traffic patterns in terms of flow, the supply there. But again, in terms of the centralized access, again, for the residents to make it in that northern direction, the 90-degree parking with the abutting cumulative 29-foot drive aisle does provide sufficient room for backing in and out.
Okay, and the people backing across the 2 lanes of traffic, which seem to me to be the only way to get in and out, that's not a problem?
You'll hear additional testimony from the traffic engineer, which I think will help clarify how many vehicles are traveling through this spine or this drive aisle independent of the parking.
Thank you.
I got a question about
Excuse me, just so everybody knows, there is someone that's recording here, and I just want to make everybody aware, that's all. Okay. No big deal, just
Question about the east and west alleyways, how wide are those?
The eastern alleyway is at its pinch point, a minimum of 23 foot clear once the trash is relocated to the back.
Okay, will the tenants be able to park in the back there, along the alleyway?
The applicant is prepared to agree that that space remain open. We have received feedback from the fire department as well, knowing that that aisle would be their main access point. So the proposal with the relocated trash is that it remains clear of any obstruction.
And with that said, then it will be marked fire lane, no parking, I assume?
Yes, we've responded to the comments from the fire chief, and we're prepared to work with them as it relates to any additional striping for their access.
Thank you. So the tenants won't be parking back there?
Correct.
I've got a quick question regarding the consolidation of the trash pickup. I guess, one, what is the size of that consolidated section as opposed to the 5 or 6 dumpsters that are there now? And it's great on paper, but I'm concerned that over 6 months to a year to 2 years, maybe trash starts to get piled up behind these stores, and then once a week get thrown into the consolidated dumpster, which could make for a bit of a messy situation back there.
Understood. The question, so first part is size. So the size of the enclosures, both 25-foot width by 16-foot depth, approximately 8 cubic yard dumpsters. You know, if you put them side by side, you provide clearance from the edge of the enclosure. That is what is anticipated to occupy that space, or what can occupy that space, which is representative of the collective, somewhat sporadic enclosures that exist today in that eastern aisle.
What about the second concern about waiting once a week to put it back there, and it kind of lays it behind all these stores for a week?
I can speak to the proposed improvement, which is collection behind the building for pickup by a private hauler. The frequency at which is as it exists today, or as required. As it relates to on-site operations, I would have to defer that.
And just to assure you, sir, the typical testimony I would hear with regard to this issue is trash collection 2 or 3 times a week, probably 2 to start out, It does the operator no justice, it does the operator no good if there is trash piling up in an unsightly manner, especially when he's operating the center. So we would agree, as a condition of approval, should the board act favorably on this application, to collect the trash at a minimum 2 days a week if necessary, and if more is required, we would do that as well. And that could certainly be enforced by the municipality.
I have a question, just to tack on Mr. Pace's question. What measures are going to be in place, or has there been any consideration for the retail tenants' pathway to take the trash out from their location to, I guess, the northern end of that building, knowing that that alley is going to be, the dumpsters are being moved to create additional clearance for the two-way traffic? Going out back could be a safety hazard, and then, going out front where the retail traffic is coming in and coming out, it just doesn't seem like what would be the best path for them.
So, great question. What I'm going to answer right now is going to say operations, including trash removal, is going to be testified to by the architect. So, take a note. We do have our wonderful typist here who's recording all the questions, and when my architect comes up, who's not going to be tonight, he'll be at the next meeting hopefully, he will testify as to operations including trash removal. Thank you.
And just one more question
Absolutely.
Related to the trash. Where you are on the exhibit that you are introducing tonight,
Yes.
you mentioned that there is a speed table that's going to connect or go from Kings to the western side of the retail, and there's going to be a crosswalk on there. I don't see any indication of a stop sign. Will that be included?
Great question. Have we included signage on this plan set yet, on this exhibit?
Signage has not been included yet, but
There are some where it says proposed stop sign.
correct, related to the speed table specifically, but it's a great question, it's a great point. As it relates to awareness of the crosswalk, we'll certainly incorporate that.
Thank you.
Any other board members or professionals? Questions? Continue.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So, Afton, why don't you come over here and help me move this to, or you have your mouse there, move it on to the next plan sheet. I believe what we're going into is now drainage, so everyone hold on to your hats. We're going to be talking about drainage now.
And which sheet number is the drainage?
So the drainage, so where we left off was on the grading plan. So where we left off was the grading plan, that is C-8 of the original preliminary major final site plan previously submitted. And council mentioned drainage, grading and drainage do go hand in hand. The sheets are split in half, again with the first being that of the northern area, the second being that of the southern area. From a grading standpoint, the topography, as previously testified to, everything is flowing in the northern direction. You'll see that on both grading plans. Again, indicative even of East Main Street going onto the property. Grading improvements, the majority of the grading is centered on that of the north, where the new buildings are being proposed for the plaza area to flatten out the area. In terms of the topography as it exists and what's required in order to do that, there are block walls or perimeter block walls. In terms of location, they do hug the perimeter of the property, and they range in height. The maximum height along the western property line is that of 3.5 feet. The eastern property line is 6 feet, and that's in the location of the trash pickup. In addition, As you transition, again, just going to the southern side.
Just for the board, we're on C9 right now, correct?
Correct.
And we're on C9.
Correct.
Thank you.
And C9, what you're noting here are regrading in the parking lot, really for mill and repave, knowing that the parking is being reconfigured. In doing so, the low points or the drainage patterns will be maintained, but there will be regrading proposed. One comment received from the board engineer was as it related to sidewalks off of East Main Street, which we'll be working closely with the board regarding incorporating to ensure that there's ADA access. Again, grading and drainage, the topography and how we're setting the grades as proposed in comparison to that of existing go hand in hand with that of drainage. So I will transition to the next sheet. Grading is still indicated on this plan, but it's a focus on stormwater, specifically the northern side of the property. So this is the Stormwater Management Plan C10. So again, you're seeing the proposed building along the top of the screen, and you're seeing many call-outs, I know not visible on the screen here, but showing topography. And in terms of drainage as it exists, stormwater goes in two different directions. When we think about drainage, we think about points of interest, or ultimately where does the water go. What you see on this sheet is comprising almost the majority of a section where under existing conditions, it flows to the northwest property. We'll speak shortly to the south, or you'll see shortly to the south of the page, but the second location that it goes is to that of the northeast property line. Under existing conditions, there is no storm system that is slowing water down. There are a series of catch basins that you've likely seen in the parking lot that are collecting water and then through conveyance, ultimately discharging it to the north. The proposed development, based on the size of it, is classified as a major development, which means it's triggering not only the borough ordinance requirements, but also that of the state requirements. More specifically, required to ensure that the runoff patterns are being maintained or reduced, and that you're treating for water quality, quantity, and recharge. The proposed development is, as you see on the screen, there's a series of porous pavement or green infrastructure systems being implemented.
And Anthony, I would just suggest you just walk up to the sheet there
Sure.
and point that out while you testify.
Yes.
Thank you.
So there are a series of porous pavement systems, and I'll try not to block anyone, that are concentrated in parking areas. To the west of the King's building, you'll see there's areas that are vertical. There's an area that's horizontal. Similarly, as we transition towards the front area, the area immediately in front of the multifamily building, you'll also notice there are rectangular areas on the screen indicative of porous pavement. Now, porous pavement, what it's doing is through the joints of the pavers specifically, it's helping treat that water, and then below ground there's void space to hold it and slow down the rate at which it runs off the property.
Let's just take a step back. So the site, now, stay up there if you don't mind. The site as it exists today in the rear, is there any, stormwater management programs of significance back there?
There are not, no.
There are not. So when rainwater hits the site as it exists today, it is just simply sheet flowing into the direction of the topo, correct?
That's correct.
Okay, and so where does that water go today? Just point it.
It goes in two locations, basically the upper left-hand side of the page or the northwest, and then that of the northeast.
Okay, and so with the stormwater management improvements that the applicant is proposing, we are now proposing to catch that runoff, correct? Correct?
Correct.
So hold it to detain it, correct?
That's correct.
And then to release it in a controlled fashion, correct?
That's correct.
And we're installing pipes and pervious pavers and other things of that nature to accomplish that, correct?
Yes.
And just to tell the board from the outset, this is all in accordance with DEP and Mendham Borough requirements for stormwater management, correct?
Yes, it is.
Okay, so take us through, so you just talked for a moment about what a pervious paver is, correct?
Yes.
And a pervious paver is just simply a piece of pavement through which water can flow, correct?
Correct.
And it catches particulates and it basically filters the water, right? And point out for me where it is that we're proposing to install that.
Yes, so the locations of the porous pavement system are within the parking, immediately west of the Kings, within the parking spaces. There are a series of systems that I'm using my finger to highlight. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, as centered in the parking areas.
Excellent, thank you. Are we doing anything else in terms of stormwater management that you want to note for the board?
In total, there are 11 porous pavement systems. I know some are being covered up by call-outs here, but they're also centralized throughout this area with the same intention.
Okay, so in your professional opinion, are we improving the drainage and the stormwater management for the site vis-a-vis these improvements?
Yes, we're meeting, specific to this area that we see on the screen, we're meeting reductions for the storm events in accordance with both the borough and the state.
Okay, and has the DEP reviewed and approved, to the extent they have jurisdiction, these improvements?
They have reviewed the proposed design, yes.
And have they approved it?
They have, yes.
Okay. All right, so that was the northwest corner of the site. Are we doing anything on the northeast corner of the site, or is that not necessary due to topo?
So the northeast corner of the site, there is an existing discharge point, pipe discharge point that exists. It collects water in the rear of the Kings. In addition, it collects water from the front of the site or in front of Kings. We are maintaining that discharge point, and we are reconnecting to the pipe. So based on reconfiguration to the parking spaces, some of the inlet locations are shifting, but the overall system, the conveyance system, with a reduction in impervious cover, is being maintained.
Okay. Thank you so much. I didn't mean to throw you off your testimony. I just wanted to highlight a couple of things. So, is there anything else you want to testify to with regard to sheet C10?
There's not, no.
Okay. And then I would just, we had issued a response letter to the board's professional reports. Mr. Ferriero had raised a couple of questions. I think we responded to them. I don't know, Paul, if there's anything you wanted to highlight before we move on.
I would make a couple of comments. Specifically as it relates to stormwater, the DEP has approved the application relative to stormwater, which is nice, but as the municipal engineer, I have an obligation to ensure that it complies with the borough ordinance, which effectively incorporates the DEP requirements. I've seen more than one application where the DEP has approved it, where it was clearly inconsistent with the DEP requirements. That being said, I don't believe that that's the case here, but I had a number of comments in my July review letter. They've been discussed a bit in the response letter from Stonefield dated September 10th. I have to go back and re-review those letters, re-review the calculations and the responses to make sure it does comply with the ordinance. But I will not be relying on the DEP's approval of the stormwater system. I've had this discussion numerous times with the people down at DEP. They understand that sometimes their reviewers don't understand everything that they see. So I will be doing my own separate review.
Paul, are the restrictions of the borough greater than the DEP restrictions?
Not in a case like, not in a project of this magnitude.
Any other questions from the board members?
I got a quick question. You made the comment that for the site that's in that picture, we're actually improving the stormwater management. But that water has to go somewhere. So where is it going?
Sure, good question. So what we're doing is the water is still flowing to the northwest location through a discharge point. But what we're doing is we're holding it back and slowing it down, slowly releasing it for the varying storm events to improve how fast it's leaving the property.
I have a question about the pervious pavers. Now, those just drain to the soil underneath the pavers, or is there a collection basin underneath each of those areas, and then it's discharged to the back?
It's a great question. So the property, the proposed BMP or best management practice for porous pavers, for this property there isn't an under drain. So if we think about the water, it's going through the paver system at grade. There's stone below it with void space that's holding the water. And then there's an under drain that's connecting to the ultimate outlet control and discharge point. Again, the under drain is implemented because the soils here are not susceptible to infiltration.
The short answer is yes, Mr. Chairman. Yes. there's a connection.
I have a question as far as all this additional parking and cars. What about like contaminants? You know, the water running off these cars and, you know, splashing around and all, you know, extra oils and contaminants from cars going into all these areas. Is that going to be a problem in these waterways in the back? Or is there some sort of filter, bladder system, something that can be implemented to contain additional contaminants?
It's a great question. And one of the state requirements is that of quality. So from a motor vehicle surface standpoint, the project is increasing, and we're required to treat that new motor vehicle surface. So the porous pavement system is doing that as well.
That simply slows down the water flow, but what about some sort of filter system or something that contains those contaminants going out? Is there anything that is done for that specifically?
So to answer the question, there is the joint, the material that is between the joints and immediately below the pavers is acting as a filter. It's a much finer material, which is helping settle out or remove any of those larger particles or anything that can't infiltrate below it.
Or will build up over time, or how does that get cleaned or remediated?
As part of the application, as part of coordination with the board engineer, an operation and maintenance manual is required for all proposed stormwater systems, and that gets recorded with the county. So that holds the applicant to a recurring inspection frequency, not to mention cleaning regimen.
They vacuum out the filters, to answer your question.
Well, there are no filters. There is a requirement with porous pavement that it be vacuumed with a high pressure vacuum on a periodic basis to get the material out of there. It's not cheap or easy to maintain, but it is a BMP that is approved by the DEP for water quality.
And what would be the frequency of that cleaning?
I don't know off the top of my head. It's at least quarterly and maybe monthly. I'd have to go back and look. Depends on the specific type of system.
Okay, so that seems the frequent cleaning, so.
Yes.
And that manual will be recorded, I believe, Paul, with the chain of title, right?
Yes.
That'll be recorded for DEP requirements in the chain of title, so it'll be a recurring obligation of the property owner.
So if I understand you correctly, you have to do a report to EPA every time you enact it.
No, that report goes to the borough. There's a requirement as part of the municipal stormwater permit that we make sure all these systems are properly maintained. A requirement that I put in every O&M manual is that all the reports for each year be submitted to my office by March 1st of the year, so I have them on the project.
Thank you.
I have a
Go ahead.
question.
Yeah.
Are the porous paver, is your stormwater plan dependent on all of the porous pavement that you have? And I asked that question because I know there was some discussion about the courtyard last time in the layout and pedestrian sensitivities there versus vehicle traffic, and if there's flexibility in the design or if it's really dependent on having the amount of pavement and porous pavement in that area.
If I understand the question, as it relates to any grading or a raised sidewalk around the building, the porous pavement design is designed with a low point. So the low point would be maintained or adjusted based on that coordination effort, and then the amount of impervious that's going to it, or the amount of area draining to it. So that would look to be maintained or adjusted.
So are you saying there is flexibility there?
There is, yes.
Any other board members?
What type of maintenance process, what type of maintenance is required for this? You mentioned a vacuum. Is this something that, if it's done quarterly or monthly, does this interrupt traffic? What does this entail?
The specifics of the maintenance and when it occurs would be coordinated by the applicant to ensure that it's not impacting any traffic or site impacts. I believe one of the recurrence in the O&M is following a rainfall event too. So in those cases, that would be vacuumed out, again, ensuring that anything that's clogged be cleaned so that the system operates as intended.
Okay, I'm back. I'm sorry, I sat down for a second, I got tired. Okay, so that was sheet C10. May we move on to sheet 11, which I believe is the southern portion of the site.
Yes. Sheet 11, again, southern portion of the site where the parking area is. It's showing the angled configuration, noting that if it was revised to be 90-degree parking, some of the low points would be altered, but what it's doing is it's replicating the existing drainage pattern.
I guess just tell the board, what is the purpose of this sheet? We've covered the updated parking, we've covered drainage from the site. What is the purpose of this sheet for the board's consideration?
The purpose of this sheet is to compare the proposed condition to the existing, noting that where water flows today, it will in the future.
Okay, but we already updated this sheet with the exhibit, correct, to show the 90-degree parking?
The front area will be
the front area. And so, Mr. Chairman, we just didn't update the full civil set because we haven't gotten through it yet, but we would update it once we get through it. So there will be an updated submission, not hiding the ball here, we just didn't plow our way through it. Thank you. Okay, thank you. So then, we have an exhibit, we have a sheet that doesn't reflect the latest exhibit, but in terms of drainage, is there anything modified with the updated parking layout with the 90-degree parking stalls that impacts drainage?
The impacts would be that to the pervious distribution, so there would be planting in between some of the strips, but overall, minor changes as it relates to the low points and where the water is ultimately going will be the same.
Okay, so ultimately we may actually see some improvements with the planting in between the aisles, right?
In comparison to what you're seeing on the screen, yes.
Okay, and I haven't forgotten Ms. Bushman's comments. We are going to speak with Mr. Ferriero after the hearing about some additional plantings in the islands there. Okay, so this is sheet C11. We have testified to it at length. Is there any questions from the board or the board's professionals on drainage in the front of the site?
Yeah, I have one question.
Yes, ma'am.
I've seen these systems before. The ones I've seen, the grass over the grow zone, is that the intent here? You actually look at it and there's grass over them and then the pavement around them.
For the porous pavement, you mean?
Yeah.
For this application, that would not be the intention. You likely see those on emergency egress paths where a fire truck is accessing the site, or there's low vehicular traffic in that area. These are for, there will not be any plantings below them. It's for stormwater and then vehicular grading.
Okay, thank you. Let's move on to sheet C12. We're on to the utility plan.
The utility plan, there's only one utility plan. It focuses that on the northern side of the site. The new buildings will be serviced with the new utilities, of course, in accordance with the local utility providers. We spoke to will serves having been obtained and where the applicant is relative to the permit process. The final utility routings will, of course, be coordinated with the borough engineer. This plan is showing the new buildings with services feeding them, all services as they exist, gas, electric, sanitary, and water.
Yeah, let's just hit the high points real quick. Gas service exists to the site today, correct?
It does, yes.
Okay, electric and telephone exist to the site today, correct?
Correct.
And there's sanitary sewer to the site today, correct?
Yes.
Although we do have to go through the sanitary sewer, we have to complete that approval process with the borough, correct?
Correct.
And we have water and fire water service to the site, correct?
Yes.
And have we applied for and received will serve letters from the applicable utilities?
We've been in contact with all utility providers. Will serves have been obtained for all of the utilities.
Now, the volume of the utilities is going to be greatly increased, and that is, you've taken that into consideration with the utility company, I assume, and say water, gas, electric, all of those things. Now, they're all going to be obviously upgraded. So you're stating that there's, these services there already, but you're going to basically have to bring in all new services. Not new services, but upgrades.
Updated, an increase in supply, right?
Yes.
And so Afton just described, when we issue a will serve letter, we include a description of the project, right?
Yes, so will serve is an upfront description noting what the building intention is in terms of magnitude for preliminary confirmation it can be serviced.
I have a question. You said that you received will serve letters from all utilities. I don't recall our sewer utility issuing that letter, unless I misunderstood something at all.
There was an application for the sewer allocation that was approved by the council.
So that's what you're counting and considering as a will serve letter?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, sir. We still have to pay the fee. Should the board approve this application, there is
You're a
a
little
fee
late
that
on
has
it,
to be
but
paid.
yeah, we got it.
Yes.
A little late, very late. I just want to clarify that. We don't issue a will serve letter.
Correct. It's an allocation
That's an allocation
granted
for
by the
us.
council.
Okay, all right. And then I'm assuming the sewer line to the site, how many inches is it gonna have to be? Does it have to be made bigger, or is it sufficient?
I believe that it's sufficient. You're only going to need a 6-inch line for a project like this.
Okay. And there's a 6-inch line there now?
Yes.
Okay.
I got a question on the electric. The will serve letter from JCP&L indicates that the applicant may provide a mutually agreeable location for a substation. Has that been addressed, or is that just a catch-all and stuff?
From when I think about utilities, I think about wet and dry. The dry utilities, they've confirmed that they can service the site at this time. As the project progresses, when an MEP comes on board, or a mechanical, electrical, plumbing engineer, those specifics will be coordinated both with the utility providers and the board.
I don't know how big a substation is and where it might fit into this, if in fact that's needed.
Say substation or transformer?
I would be, a project of this size, I've never heard needing a substation. I would be shocked. I mean, typically what you hear is you need a transformer. I believe we have a space for the transformer on the site plan, correct, Afton?
Yes.
Yeah, so we have a space for a transformer. It's probably above ground, if I had to imagine. It's probably a ground-mounted transformer in the rear of the site, right, Afton?
Yes.
I've been doing this for a couple of years. Okay.
So all the utilities, the electrical utilities will be underground, and then the transformer will be at ground level, is what you're saying.
So, Cliff, why don't you answer that?
So under existing conditions, there is overhead electric on the property. New services for electrical are encouraged to be underground. So there will be some transfer location where it transitions from above ground to below ground.
Is that shown on the plan, above ground and below ground?
It's not indicated in the plan as submitted. We're showing a feed as it relates to overhead poles nearby, but the specifics as it relates to the exact conduit routing will be determined by the
So just to clarify that for the board, I think it's a question that deserves
Yeah.
being clarified on the plans.
No, I agree. So the question
And
is...
then I have a
Yes,
question
go
about
ahead.
the transformer above ground. How large is the transformer? What's the KV on it?
What's the size? Let's start with what's the size of the transformer?
So for this project, we don't have the final determination from JCP&L. A typical transformer size is that of 8 by 8 in footprint, 8 foot by 8 foot.
Pat mounted.
I would like to make ask one question about the water service. Do you know if New Jersey American is going to require a hot box for this facility?
We note the comment received from your department. We anticipate there will be. We've been in contact with NJW, Joe Davignon from North American Water. They do require the hydraulic calculations as it relates to the interior of the building, so we'll be working with him regarding that.
Paul, what exactly is a hot box?
It's not this room, believe it or not. This room feels like a hot box, but this room is actually not a hot box. A hot box is a part of the water service that has a backflow preventer meter in it and some other facilities that the water company requires be above ground. It's a relatively new requirement. Because it's above ground, it has to be insulated and heated, which is why they call it a hot box. But a hot box, a lot bigger than your car. Typically, they are 5 or 6 feet wide, 5 or 6 feet tall, maybe up to 20 feet long. Stainless, even bigger than my car. Stainless steel. And the reason why I bring that up is because they are, frankly, pretty ugly. And I think there needs to be some coordination as to where that goes. Sometimes it's not much of a choice with the utility company, but there needs to be sufficient screening for that when it does go in.
And I'll just stipulate,
For the transformer too, unless it's hidden in the rear or something.
right. I think the transformer is going to be in the rear. The hot box, I don't know if we have a definitive location for it, but we're happy to screen that as possible. Lately, this is very exciting news. They let you pick colors for the hot box, so you may be able to get
That's
it.
new. I've never seen anything
Yeah.
except the stainless steel sarcophagus.
New Jersey American, green.
We'll take the town survey.
Okay.
I think green.
Green would be good, right? Yes, I think so too. Okay, so that's the utility plan. Any questions on how that's working? Good? Okay. So let's move, we're on to lighting, which is C13 and C14.
Let me just ask one procedural question. I know
Right.
in meeting 2, gave ample opportunity for in meeting 2.
Can you state your name and your
Oh,
address?
my name is Frank Lupo, 17 Green Road. I know in
Spell your last name?
Lupo, L-U-P-O. In meeting 2,
Frank, at the end of this professional, I will open it up to the public.
That's-
In the other meeting, I did that to try to break it up, but it did confuse some people, so I just figured let's wait until the end and hold your questions for the end of this professional.
very good, thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Lupo. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Let's move on to the lighting plan, which again is sheet C13 and C14. Take us through that after, please. Thank you.
Yes. C13, again, the northern portion of the property, in proximity to the proposed buildings rather, has been designed with LED downward facing light fixtures. There are pole lights, 2 specific to the interior of the property. I'll circle with my pen or centralize to that of the plaza. And then there are a series of building mounted fixtures surrounding the perimeter, or on the perimeter of the buildings. We do note the plans as submitted indicate 2 pole lights by the amenity deck, or that of the pool, which will be removed. We understand that those being mounted at 15 foot relative to the pool area, we can better coordinate a bollard or something lower for the amenity area specifically on this western side. Additionally, the pole lights are mounted at 15 feet in height, where 25 feet is the max requirement. And then the building lights are mounted just over 9 feet or 9.33 feet along the perimeter of the building. Again, all of these lights are LED, they're downward facing. We know the temperature of them is all proposed to be that of 3,000 Kelvin. I know there was a comment from the board professional as it related to 4,000 versus 3,000. We'll certainly coordinate to ensure that that's uniform. In addition, there are interior LED lights to the garage on a grid to ensure that there is an illuminance that is distributed throughout the property. In terms of light trespass, the proposed numerical values that you see on this plan are that of a unit of measure noted as a foot candle, or how a measure of light at grade. There is minimal, any light trespass as indicated along the western property line is that of 0.1 or 0.2. We note that the plan or the model as submitted doesn't model the fence, it doesn't model the vegetative buffer that exists along the property line, so no light trespass is anticipated as part of the project. In addition, those decorative lights along the building for security measures, we'll coordinate with the board to ensure those that will remain on are indicated. And the overall lighting intention is to have uniform lighting. We note there's a comment as it relates to a couple areas being lower than the board professional or the board engineer might like, which we'll certainly coordinate with them. In addition, on the western side of Kings, there are pole lights, those to replicate that of the lantern type fixture. Similarly, in the northern or in the southern side of the parking lot, in the Kings parking lot, there are lantern fixtures that exist today. They'll be relocated as required, but proposed to maintain the same aesthetic.
So let's just take a beat. Why don't you walk up, if you don't mind, go up to the plan set there. We have essentially 3 or 4 different main types of lights here, right?
Yes.
So we have the A, which is indicated on the plans. Point out the A.
So there are 2 pole lights in this central area.
Right, so we have the 2 pole lights there. Do we have a fixture detail on the right side of that sheet there? That is the A light?
Partially, yes. So the A fixture will be decorative in nature as attached to the pole.
Okay, so we have some mounted fixtures, and we have a couple of pole mounted fixtures as well, correct?
Yes, so pole mounted are here, that's indicative of the A fixture, and then the diagonally across the D fixture is also pole mounted,
Okay.
which will be located elsewhere in the parking area and the front.
And so those are primarily designed to give light to the parking area, correct?
Correct.
Okay, and so we had originally located 2 of those pole mounted fixtures, plan north, plan south of the pool, correct?
Correct.
Just highlight them right there, one there, and we are now proposing as a condition of approval, should the board act favorably, we can remove those fixtures. And it won't impact the lighting distribution for the site.
When you say lighted, not counting the decorative ones, what kind of light are you talking about?
So pole light, meaning the fixture itself is mounted to a vertical pole.
No, what does the head of the fixture do?
Yes, so there are,
Overall light, what is it?
no, so there are no,
The decorative, but I want to know what the other ones are.
Good question, good question. So pole lights, there are 2. One that replicates the lantern style required per ordinance that you see in the front of Kings. The second is that of something, the light fixture A as indicated, which is more of a metal gooseneck, if you will, as attached to a pole.
And the lighting doesn't, the lighting complies with all ordinance requirements, correct?
Yes.
And it doesn't spill over the property line, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
I do have a question.
Yes, go ahead.
Okay. A question about the lighting spilling over to the property line. You're saying it doesn't go past the foliage here, but what happens when the leaves are down? And is there anticipated permeation through that area to neighboring properties on the west?
So it's a good question, and I'll clarify my statement, which is when you look at the lighting patterns measured on the property, it doesn't account for any structures beyond the building. So for reference, there's a fence in this location. There is whether it has leaves on it or not, there are plantings along this area that help dissipate light. So that is what I was clarifying, is none of that is modeled. The lighting as you see on the plan, which again has very low, nearly 0 values at the property line, is conservative in nature.
And what kind of fence is that? Is that a chain link fence, or what type of fencing is that that could possibly block more lighting?
So the fence, and I'm just going to consult my notes, I know the record has it from prior testimony, I want to ensure that it's consistent. The fence is located 10 feet off the building, and it is It is a coated or a wooden coated fence.
Okay, like a solid wooden fence would be, like a stockade fence would be?
It'd be solid in nature, meaning there wouldn't be any openings.
And that height is what, 6 feet? Or 4 feet?
I believe it's 6 feet. Yes, it's 6 feet.
6 feet. Okay, and the height of the light lanterns on the other side, you know, the 10 foot from the building, what is the height of those lights?
Good question. So in proximity, the light is a little bit higher. So it's 3 feet higher than the fence, and as the fixture, the distribution of the light works its way outward, it dissipates based on varying elements vertically. So the light itself is a little higher than the fence, but the at-grade measurement of light is impacted by the fence, ever so slightly.
So you're saying that it might be shielded to the downward side? Are you saying that?
The testimony, or what I'm trying to explain, is that at grade beyond that fence, the light levels are impacted by that barrier.
There's no line of, I'm just asking, is there going to be a line of sight where if somebody on a neighboring property to the west is looking out their yard in the dead of winter, are they going to see a light bulb in their eyes?
It's a good question. The heavy vegetation between that of the adjacent residences prohibits that visibility of these decorative fixtures. Again, they're 9 feet off the ground.
I just want to be clear about this, so everybody understands it completely. This plan shows, what's represented on there is the foot candle measurement at ground level, what the amount of illumination is on the ground, okay? That's not glare, that's not the visibility of the source, that's the amount of light that you can see on the ground, okay? 0.1 foot candles is very, very low. That's generally not a problem, and as was stated, the fence is going to cut that off. But the question about, is somebody going to see a light fixture?
Yes.
There is no doubt that somebody from some location will see a light fixture. The fixtures that are here are 100% cut off. There's no convex fixture where the light would be in a lower bowl, so to speak, where it spreads out more. All the optics and all the source is up in the cap of the fixture.
So it's shielded.
It's shielded as much as possible, dark sky compliant, all those things. But I don't want anybody to walk out of here thinking, I'm never going to see a light bulb. Because not only is that impossible, it's not going to happen. It's not a standard.
What you're stating, Paul, is the light bulb is actually recessed up.
It is recessed. You will not see the source.
You will not see the light source.
Correct.
Does that include this building B wall light? The others are obviously downward pointing, but what about B?
That's a wall washer light, correct? Does it go up and down?
It goes down.
It goes down. So it goes down as well. So again, you look at that, you're not going to, if you're underneath it, look up. Yeah, you're going to see the source.
Okay.
That's a
It's
cylinder
not
with
clear.
a hole from the side.
My
Thank you
que-
for that clarification, Paul.
My question is this what color is this light? Is it a bright white light, a lower intensity yellow light?
It's been testified that, you know, there were some notes on the plan for both 3,000 and 4,000 K. They're going to be all set at 3,000 K. That's a much softer light that we look for.
I know the biggest issue with LEDs is that bright white.
And it's not. It's
Cooler
not.
light or that more yellow color.
It's the more yellow color. It's not the blues. The
Yeah.
blues, the blue or bright whites, that's when you get the 4,000 or 5,000 kelvin. So this is 3,000. It's what should be used on a site like this.
I have a question about the northwest corner of the property. A couple of times you mentioned heavy vegetation. Is that what's there now?
Yes, so there is, and I'm not sure if it's the pages that are right after this or right after soil erosion and sediment control, but there is a landscaping plan I'll testify to. To answer your question, it's the landscaping as proposed on our property and then that of the adjacent wooded area to remain.
Okay, so there will be some landscaping?
Yes.
Anyone else?
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Let's move on to the sort of, my notes say it's sort of C13 and C14.
Let me just ask one procedural question. I know
Right.
in meeting 2, the ample opportunity for in meeting 2.
Can you state your name and your
Oh,
address?
my name is Frank Lupo, 17 Green Road. I know in
Spell your last name?
Lupo, L-U-P-O. In meeting 2,
Frank, at the end of this professional, I will open it up to the public.
That's-
In the other meeting, I did that to try to break it up, but it did confuse some people, so I just figured let's wait until the end and hold your questions for the end of this professional.
very good, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Lupo, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Let's move on to the lighting plan, which again is sheet C13 and C14. Take us through that after, please, thank you.
Yes. C13, again, the northern portion of the property, in proximity to the proposed buildings rather, has been designed with LED downward facing light fixtures. There are pole lights, 2 specific to the interior of the property. I'll circle with my pen or centralize to that of the plaza. And then there are a series of building mounted fixtures surrounding the perimeter, around the perimeter of the buildings. We do note the plans as submitted indicate 2 pole lights by the amenity deck, or that of the pool, which will be removed. We understand that those being mounted at 15 foot relative to the pool area, we can better coordinate a bollard or something lower for the amenity area specifically on this western side. Additionally, the pole lights are mounted at 15 feet in height, where 25 feet is the max requirement. And then the building lights are mounted just over 9 feet or 9.33 feet along the perimeter of the building. Again, all of these lights are LED, they're downward facing. We know the temperature of them is all proposed to be that of 3,000 Kelvin. I know there was a comment from the board professional as it related to 4,000 versus 3,000. We'll certainly coordinate to ensure that that's uniform. In addition, there are interior LED lights to the garage on a grid to ensure that there is an illuminance that is distributed throughout the property. In terms of light trespass, the proposed numerical values that you see on this plan are that of a unit of measure noted as a foot candle, or how a measure of light at grade. There is minimal any light trespass as indicated along the western property line is that of 0.1 or 0.2. We note that the plan or the model as submitted doesn't model the fence, it doesn't model the vegetative buffer that exists along the property line. So no light trespass is anticipated as part of the project. In addition, those decorative lights along the building for security measures, we'll coordinate with the board to ensure those that will remain on are indicated. And the overall lighting intention is to have uniform lighting. We note there's a comment as it relates to a couple areas being lower than the board professional or the board engineer might like, which we'll certainly coordinate with them. In addition, on the western side of Kings, there are pole lights, those to replicate that of the lantern type fixture. Similarly, in the northern or in the southern side of the parking lot, in the Kings parking lot, there are lantern fixtures that exist today. They'll be relocated as required, but proposed to maintain the same aesthetic.
So let's just take a beat. Why don't you walk up, if you don't mind, go up to the plan set there. We have essentially 3 or 4 different main types of lights here, right?
Yes.
So we have the A, which is indicated on the plans, point out the A.
So there are 2 pole lights in this central area.
Right, so we have the 2 pole lights there. Do we have a fixture detail on the right side of that sheet there? The A light?
Partially, yes. So the A fixture will be decorative in nature as attached to the pole.
Okay, so we have some mounted fixtures, and we have a couple of pole-mounted fixtures as well, correct?
Yes. So pole mounted are here. That's indicative of the A fixture, and then the diagonally across the D fixture is also pole mounted,
Okay.
which will be located elsewhere in the parking area and the front.
And so those are primarily designed to give light to the parking area, correct?
Correct.
Okay, and so we had originally located 2 of those pole-mounted fixtures, plan north, plan south of the pool, correct?
Correct.
Just highlight them right there, one there, one there. And we are now proposing as a condition of approval, should the board act favorably, we can remove those fixtures. And it won't impact the lighting distribution for the site.
When you say lighted, not counting the decorative ones, what kind of light are you talking about?
So pole light, meaning the fixture itself is mounted to a vertical pole.
No, what does the head of the fixture do?
Yes. So there are
Cobra light, what is it?
no. So there are no
The decorative, but I want to know what the parking, the other ones are.
Good question. Good question. So pole lights, there are 2. One that replicates the lantern style required per ordinance that you see in the front of King's. The second is that of something, the light fixture A is indicated, which is more of a metal gooseneck, if you will, as attached to a pole.
And the lighting doesn't, the lighting complies with all ordinance requirements, correct?
Yes.
And it doesn't spill over the property line, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
I do have a question.
Yes, go ahead.
Okay. A question about the lighting spilling over to the property line. You're saying it doesn't go past the foliage here, but what happens when the leaves are down? And is there anticipated permeation through that area to neighboring properties on the west?
So it's a good question, and I'll clarify my statement, which is when you look at the lighting patterns measured on the property, it doesn't account for any structures beyond the building. So for reference, there is a fence in this location. There is whether it has leaves on it or not, there are plantings along this area that help dissipate light. So that is what I was clarifying, is none of that is modeled. The lighting as you see on the plan, which again has very low, nearly 0 values at the property line, is conservative in nature.
And what kind of fence is that? Is that a chain link fence, or what type of fencing is that could possibly block more lighting?
So the fence, and I'm just going to consult my notes, I know the record has it from prior testimony, I want to ensure that it's consistent. The fence is located 10 feet off the building, and it is a coated or a wooden coated fence.
Okay. Like a solid wooden fence would be, like a stockade fence would be?
It'd be solid in nature, meaning there wouldn't be any openings.
And that height is what, 6 feet? Or 4 feet?
I believe it's 6 feet. Yes, it's 6 feet.
6 feet. Okay. And the height of the light lanterns on the other side, you know, the 10 foot from the building, what is the height of those lights?
Good question. So in proximity, the light is a little bit higher. So it's 3 feet higher than the fence, and as the fixture, the distribution of the light works its way outward, it dissipates based on varying elements vertically. So the light itself is a little higher than the fence, but the at-grade measurement of light is impacted by the fence, ever so slightly.
So you're saying that it might be shielded to the downward side? Are you saying that?
The testimony, or what I'm trying to explain, is that at grade beyond that fence, the light levels are impacted by that barrier.
There's no line of, I'm just asking, is there going to be a line of sight where somebody on a neighboring property to the west is looking out their yard in the dead of winter? Are they going to see a light bulb in their eyes?
It's a good question. The heavy vegetation between that of the adjacent residences prohibits that visibility of these decorative fixtures. Again, they're 9 feet off the ground.
I just want to be clear about this, so everybody understands it completely. This plan shows, what's represented on there is the foot candle measurement at ground level, what the amount of illumination is on the ground. Okay, that's not glare, that's not the visibility of the source, that's the amount of light that you can see on the ground. Okay, 0.1 foot candles is very, very low. That's generally not a problem, and as the state of defense is going to cut that off. But the question about, is somebody going to see a light fixture?
Yes.
There is no doubt that somebody from some location will see a light fixture. The fixtures that are here are 100% cut off. There's no convex fixture where the light would be in a lower bowl, so to speak, where it spreads out more. All the optics and all the source is up in the cap of the fixture.
So it's shielded.
It's shielded as much as possible, dark sky compliant, all those things. But I don't want anybody to walk out of here thinking, I'm never going to see a light bulb. Because not only is that impossible, it's not going to happen. It's not a standard.
What you're stating, Paul, is the light bulb is actually recessed up.
It is recessed. You will not see the source.
You will not see the light source.
Correct.
Does that include this building B wall light? The others are obviously downward pointing, but what about B?
That's a wall washer light, correct? Does it go up and down?
It goes down.
It goes down. So it goes down as well. So again, you look at that, you're not going to, if you're underneath it, look up. Yeah, you're going to see the source.
Okay.
That's a
It's
cylinder
not
with
clear.
a hole in the side.
My
Thank you
que-
for that clarification, Paul.
My question is this what color is this light? Is it a bright white light, a lower intense yellow light?
It's been testified that, there were some notes on the plan for both 3,000 and 4,000 K. They're going to be all set at 3,000 K. That's a much softer light that we look for.
I know the biggest issue with LEDs is it's that bright white.
It's not.
Cooler
It's not.
light or that more yellow color.
It's the more yellow color. It's not the blues. The
Yeah.
blues, the blue or bright whites, that's when you get the 4,000 or 5,000 kelvin. So this is 3,000. It's what should be used on a site like this.
I have a question about the northwest corner of the property. A couple of times you mentioned heavy vegetation. Is that what's there now?
Yes, so there is, and I'm not sure if it's the pages that are right after this or right after soil erosion and sediment control, but there is a landscaping plan I'll testify to. To answer your question, it's the landscaping as proposed on our property and then that of the adjacent wooded area to remain.
Okay, so there will be some landscaping?
Yes.
Anyone else?
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Let's move on to the soil, my notes say it's the soil of a sheet, which is sheet C15. Sheet C15, just for, so you can hear me. Okay, so we're just briefly going to talk about the soil erosion and sediment control plan. This is an outside agency approval that we have obtained, but let's briefly touch upon it to describe what we're doing here.
Sure. The plan, again, two-parter, but what it's indicative of are protection measures during construction to prevent that of sediment transport, whether through the air or underground. So things that are indicated on this plan are consistent with those intentions. Previous testimony and comment or clarification from the board engineer related to that of the super silt fence that is indicated along the northern property or where the disturbance follows the perimeter to be incorporated as part of the project.
Okay, and Morris County monitors and approves the SCD plan, correct?
Yes.
And so they actually have people that go out and monitor and approve the fencing and everything like that in connection with the construction of the project, correct?
Correct.
And we have obtained that approval, correct?
Yes.
And that would be an ongoing compliance condition, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, that the applicant would be required to comply with should the board approve this application.
Paul, you have any concerns with that?
No, that's pretty standard. Soil conservation is out there. I have inspectors on sites like this and usually work with the contractors to make sure they get it in place before SCD comes out.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Let me just, how you doing? You need a break? Oh, you okay?
I would like to request a 30-minute break, computer play, or a little intermission, maybe 5 to 10 minutes.
Sure, we can do that.
No, after you're finished.
Yeah.
We have, so just, we have C17, C18, C19. We got about 3 sheets to go through for the landscaping plan. Do you want us to plow through or take a break?
If you'd like to take, let's take a break right now.
Okay.
We're at a stopping point. Let's take a 10-minute break.
Okay. All right, thank you. All right.
Well, color changes totally from the camera. Yes, yes.
Okay, for the record. Okay. Yes, and then I'd like to make an announcement at 9:30, except no new testimony. We have to vacate the building by 10 o'clock, just so that everybody here knows that.
Yeah, thank you for that, Mr. Chairman. And I've taken off my jacket. It's just very hot. I hope you don't mind a little deviation from formality here.
There's no fashion police here.
Okay, thank you.
As long as you don't pull out another Red Bull.
Yeah, well, two is my limit for the night. Okay. All right, thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, members of the public. Just for the record, again, it's Derek Orth from Inglesino Taylor here on behalf of the applicant, VF Mendham Apartments. We're now turning to the landscape plan, which is sheet C17, 18, and 19, I believe. So I'll just turn it back over to my engineer to continue with her testimony. Thank you.
Is it still working? Everyone can hear me? Great. Alright, so C17 overall landscaping plan. This is split into 3. So the overall plan showing the proposed landscaping throughout the property, and then that north of the south. When thinking about landscaping for this site, overall you can tell where under existing conditions there is predominantly pavement. In the rear of the site there is a gravel driveway, not to mention previously maintained lawn. There are proposed plantings throughout, and it's a robust mix between trees, shrubs, plantings, ensuring that those being native are incorporated, those being in accordance with the ordinance are incorporated. I will skip to the next page just to blow things up or enlarge things for reference purposes. Centraling on the northern side of the property, sheet C18 of the landscaping plan focused on the northern side of the property by the proposed buildings. You have proposed plantings interior to the courtyard of the motor court between the new buildings, which is a formal planting scheme really with accentuating the statue. So there's a statue centralized in that area. You'll hear more on from the architect. Plantings will accentuate that, not to mention the foundations of the building. We testified previously as it related to a pedestrian egress way. That will be balanced with foundation plantings for an inviting overall appearance in this area. That's internal to the buildings or in that centralized area. Along the western property line and the northern property line, there will be plantings proposed on the property to having decommissioned that of the gravel path or the roadway that you see along the western path and the lawn to the north. And the wooded area immediately adjacent to our property will remain. All of that will remain. We are just proposing plantings to further support the environmentally sensitive areas. In addition, shade trees, you'll notice west of the King's building where the parking lot is, a series of circles indicative of shade trees throughout. Overall, the total landscaping design is comprised of over 2,000 total plants when you break it down, and that's on the property versus the northern side of the site. You have 74 deciduous trees, and that is centralized on the property itself. Evergreens as well, and shrubs, perennials and grasses. And from a DEP standpoint, and when I say DEP, I'm really focusing in that western property line adjacent to the multifamily building and the northern area adjacent to the multifamily building. That will introduce additionally over 400 plantings as part of the proposed design. Again, native species to support that of local wildlife, and pollinator species are proposed, and the palette ranges knowing that 100% of the species to the north and the west are that of native. In addition, in the south of the site, we've talked about the main drive aisle that'll have plantings adjacent to it in the perimeter buffer, or in the perimeter landscape bed, not to mention that, in the retail area. Additionally, as you drive into the property, there will be plantings as well on either side of the drive aisle, noting that this will add to the experience, the inviting experience when those visitors are coming to the property, not to mention shade trees throughout the parking area for added shade in that area. Overall, the plantings as proposed are diverse. They do lend themselves to the native species as required by the state in certain portions of the property. We note the varietal, or the species in terms of the shade trees, in the comment related to an additional species being introduced. We're happy to work with the board engineer as it relates to the exact species that are being proposed on the property, knowing that the design intent will remain the same. In addition, we also note that as it relates to, again, the board comment related to configuration of the parking or landscaping, any revisions to that nature will be incorporated as well. Overall, I am going to go back just to the overall plan as we take questions, because I do think it does a great job at noting along the northern side of the property where the additional lush vegetation is being planted, really to support that of the wooded area as it wraps around the building. Similarly, the western side, and then that of the shade trees, foundation plantings, planter beds throughout the parking where improvements are proposed as well.
Any questions of the board?
Yeah, I have a question. You're showing on the left side, on the other side of the retail, that's where all those impervious pavers are that you talked about for stormwater?
Yes.
But those are also those pavers are not parking spaces.
They are located in the parking spaces.
So you have paver parking spaces.
That's correct.
Is any of what's shown on the landscaping plan existing that is to remain, or is it all newly installed vegetation?
There are trees that exist on the property to remain within planted islands. Based on the parking reconfiguration, the applicant is seeking to maintain as many as possible. Just noting that the new configuration will introduce additional shade trees. So there are some that have been indicated on prior sheets with that circle or a symbol indicative of a tree. You'll notice on the site exhibit mentioned earlier that tonight there are some indicative of that, but the landscaping plan specifically is predominantly that of proposed trees. I'll go so far as to clarify along the frontage of East Main Street, there are existing trees, mature trees that will remain.
So there are different symbols for the existing vegetation?
Correct. There is indicated on the survey submitted to the board, and then the symbology noted in the legend for these sheets are indicative of the newer or the new plantings.
Can you expand on the northern end of the property behind the building? And if it's possible, I'd like you to trace along the exhibit there what the existing tree line is and what the proposed tree line will be in that area north and west of the proposed building.
Yes.
And can you bring it down and make it larger, because I said that it'll be too high, and also I think it'll be easier to see if you bring it down a little more. Okay, I guess that doesn't, you have to go the overall, because the overall shows what's happening behind the building and not the north section.
Apologize, I'm struggling on the tech front as well. Yeah.
I think if the overall landscaping plan is the one you gotta pull up. And then just, there you go, and blow up on that. There you go.
Bear with me, my apologies.
That's the one we want to see, just expand it.
Not in this mode.
That one should work.
We'll get there.
Yeah, take your time.
Maybe just work with that one that you had prior.
And unfortunately, it's not going to directly address Mr. Farrell's question.
That's the one.
Leave that one there.
Yeah, I can reach it on here and we'll work to zoom in. The question relates to the wooded.
Don't do it while she's pointing at it.
Let's see. All right, we're gonna go with this. We're gonna go with it. All right, we're gonna go. Thank you for the patience. The question pertains to the wooded tree line and then that of the proposed landscaping abutting it. So I'll trace in a counterclockwise direction where the existing tree line lives. You'll notice these shaded areas are that of surveyed trees. So the wooded line is the perimeter along the top of this area, and then it comes down along the western property line as well.
And where is the proposed tree line?
In the proposed tree line, you'll see a series of circles or smaller symbols in this area. All of this is proposed to be landscaping. Similarly, as you turn the corner again, this is an existing landscaping pocket where the roadway under existing conditions continued down here. Additional landscaping is being proposed.
Okay, thank you.
I've got a question. Is there anything proposed to be added on the left side, all the way to the west? I see in the back, but there's no homes behind them. There's homes on the left side. Is there Are there any plantings there to sort of screen the 5-story building from someone's backyard?
So the existing wooded line does come onto the property under existing conditions, and the application is proposing to add additional plantings to that. In addition, when we think about the buffer requirement as it relates to this side of the property, the dimension or that buffer width is substantial as it exists with the added planting proposed.
And does the area that's in the north section, is that proposed to be utilized as an outdoor space or just an open space, not accessible?
That's a great question and clarification point. So the area immediately to the north, as I highlighted with the pen or the pointer, is to be dedicated in the easement to the state. So that area is going to supplement the environmental features, and it will be part of an easement, so it will not be for recreational or open space use in that area.
And that easement will be dedicated to the borough?
I'll confirm the specifics related to the easement, but it does get recorded and the borough is aware.
Mr. Chairman?
I thought it was part of our DEP permit that we recorded with the state, but I'll defer to Paul.
Generally, those easements associated with permits like this are to the state. The DEP is the beneficiary.
Okay.
Excuse me, I appreciate all the testimony, but Mr. Chairman, we're running up on the clock here, and I don't think it's fair to the public, and I'll feel enough time to ask all their questions. So I don't know when we'll cut this off at 9:30.
Yeah, I
don't
was
know
just
that you're.
advised by council for the same thing, and after this, we're done with this sheet, we're gonna open it up to the public.
Yeah, I think I would recommend we stop it at 9 o'clock and give the public a good 45 minutes if we have to. It's
Yeah, well,
not fair, they've been calling and sitting here waiting patiently.
Yeah, let's wrap it up there, so that we're done with this sheet. That's a good.
I think that's the civil set, right, Nathan?
Did you have a question as well? No, that's correct. That's
the civil set, so, okay, that concludes the direct testimony on the civil set. And
Before I open it to the public, is there anybody else on the board that has questions?
I do have just one question. So at some point in time, we will get fresh plans that show the restructured parking, correct?
Yes, yes.
There'll be a whole new resubmission of the civil text.
That's correct, Tom. We wanted to hear the comments from the board on the balance of the civil set that we presented tonight, the board's professionals, and we will be resubmitting a civil set as part of this application. Thank you.
Will you be looking at the pedestrian circulation that we discussed in the courtyard? I know that was mostly last meeting, but I'm not sure if you were going to look at that area.
In the courtyard of the back portion of the residential, the architect will testify to that in greater detail.
Who's testifying to that?
Bruce Stevie, the architect.
Okay. Okay.
I have a quick question. It's dealing with parking on A3. There's still 3 spots that are in a diagonal. Is there a reason for that? It's kind of near the CVS.
yes. In this location?
Yes.
Yes. So you'll hear that is a one-way aisle as it continues in that direction. You'll also note that the aisle width here has all been contemplated to keep that as an existing condition, but you'll hear traffic testimony related to the parking spaces.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Okay, I'd like to open this up to the public. Now, just a reminder, you have 3 minutes to pose your question.
Could I suggest? I was just going to say, we want to do one section at a time. Otherwise, it's all done.
I think.
Okay, that's fine.
So, each member of the public would have 3 minutes to pose your question to the professional about the testimony received. Try not to deviate, skew them off too far. And please state your name, your address. If you were protected under Daniel's law, you do not need to state your address. So whoever would like to come up from the public, step up and state your name.
I would ask that you spell your last name for the stenographer.
Mark Vandenhende, V-A-N-D-E-N-H-E-N-D-E. I'm going to read
Address?
11 Coventry Road, Mendham. I'll read my questions. I have hard copies for the engineer and for the council.
Can you pull the microphone a little closer?
Okay, drawing C3 demolition. There's an existing, let me start with where you started, the grading plan. There's a test pit identification table shown on the drawing. However, there's no test pit symbol on the drawing legend, and there are no test pits identified on the drawing. Please identify the locations of the pits. The seasonal high ground depth varies from a shallow 1.3 feet to 10 feet. Has the groundwater table been met? How?
Oh, I'm sorry. If you want to respond to it point by point, you can, or if there's some kind of general tranche of questions you want to get out.
I have 3 minutes. I have 3 minutes. So
3 minutes, then you respond.
I will give you a copy of the
Oh, you got a copy? Okay, great, thank you.
All right.
How will the proposed foundation impact the groundwater table? Question concerning C3, there's an existing stream shown in the northwest of the property which was to be protected throughout construction. On 6/14/24, we noticed clear water continuously flowing in that area. What is the source of this stream? On 6/14/24, on the north center of the property, the highest topographical headwater of the spring of the north branch of the Red River was observed. See photos. Has the developer informed the NJDEP of the spring? How will the spring be protected during construction? Truck turning, loading docks. Why is, let's just talk about loading docks. Why is the CDS loading dock not shown? Why are parking spots shown where the CDS loading docks are? I think that'll blow a hole in your dumpster location. C28. This is relative to your utility plan. You talk about all your utilities, but you don't really show the hydrant. I had to scan the documents looking for height. I found the single location of the hydrant. It should be clearly demarcated. Is there only one hydrant for this facility? Is a single fire hydrant sufficient? Will additional fire hydrants be added? Is the parking garage enclosed, or can the firefighters access the parking deck from all sides? Your survey RUT-2022 200218 Rev 5. The table lists, there are several tables listed: survey notes, survey references, survey description, flood notes, Schedule A5, Schedule B Part 2. Schedule B Part 1 is not shown, and notes 1 through 9 are missing. Why are they missing? The revision table has revision 2 missing, revision 5 shows twice.
Are you almost through with your
Almost
questions?
finished. Was a geotechnical report performed? If yes, will it be submitted as a supplement to the application? What type of foundation is planned to get to that? And if piers are being proposed, how deep will it be?
Thank you.
I can pull out a set of drawings for that.
Thank you.
Quick question, if one of us want to yield our time to him, can we do that?
Repeat that, please.
If I want to yield my time to Mark, can I do that?
No, you cannot.
He comes so prepared with so many good
He was very efficient and has it all printed out, and I think that's going to be extremely helpful.
Okay, we're going to go through, I guess my engineer has a printout. I haven't looked at it, but there's a printout of the questions. If you want to go through them, to the extent you have testified to them.
Yes.
Thank you. Let me get a copy.
Oh, they want to respond to all of that? Okay.
All right, let me go up here and hand these over. All right.
Okay, but before those are, hold on a second. Point of order, Mr. Chairman, before exhibits are passed to the board, I don't know what they are. I would like to know what they are, and I don't think this is the time to introduce exhibits during the period of questioning of my expert. There is another time for the introduction of exhibits in the course of the board proceedings.
You are absolutely correct on that, yes. So that, maybe hand those exhibits back.
Just for clarification to the public, after the entire case has been presented by the applicant, you will have the opportunity to present your own testimony and submit exhibits in support of that testimony. But at this phase of the hearing, you cannot do that.
And Derek, some of those questions, maybe we haven't gone over them yet, as far as, so I wouldn't be so concerned about answering those questions. They can be answered at a later date when testimony from you is given about those specific items like fire hydrant and things like that.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. We will present that testimony at a later point, but after you have a list of questions, as it concerns the testimony that you gave, can you provide some responses to them?
Yes. So I'll begin with the geotechnical report. A geotechnical report or geotechnical investigation has been performed for the site. It is included as an appendice as part of the previously submitted stormwater report, which has all summary information related to the test pits, also indication of the seasonal high water table. And I'll go so far as to note that our storm design requires a minimum separation from the seasonal high groundwater elevation, which has been incorporated and considered. Regarding the building foundation and the specifics of the building design, I will have to defer that to the architect as it relates to the structure that you'll hear additional testimony on. The grading plan in terms of the test pit locations. Again, the appendix in the stormwater report does have a test pit location plan that indicates where all the test pits are located in proximity to the site, not to mention in proximity to the storm design.
Groundwater table.
And in the table, in the geotechnical report, similar to that on the plan, it's duplicate information. It does identify all pit locations, their location, the depth of the groundwater, and the findings throughout. We're in agreement that the seasonal high water does vary throughout the property. All of those parameters are indicated within the stormwater report and within the geotechnical report that's comprised as part of it. The foundation impact, again, the foundation will be designed based on the geotechnical findings, the specifics related to the foundation design.
What is the required separation between the bottom of your stormwater system and the seasonal high groundwater table that you have?
It's a minimum of 1 foot where you have an under drain system. We do. The other questions, it looks, I'm just reading through to make sure that I'm being comprehensive. The truck turning, I know there are questions related to the truck turning. The traffic engineer will be covering the site circulation, specifically that of the truck turning maneuvers. The construction details, as it relates to the hydrant, we are in agreement that the hydrant indicated on the plans exists. You heard testimony as it related to the utility provider requirements in terms of any applicable at-grade structure, being that of that hot box. The final design will be coordinated with the utility provider to their requirements.
And we're gonna put hydrants wherever the fire chief wants us to put hydrants throughout the site, correct?
That's correct. The parking garage is enclosed. It is, the design of the building and the parking garage will be further explained by the architect. Additionally, the site circulation in terms of emergency vehicles and their paths on the property will also be explained by the traffic engineer. Regarding the demolition plan, there has been previous testimony as it relates to the environmental constraints as identified and verified by the state having jurisdiction over them, and the applicable buffer areas, transition areas that require protection and associated permitting related to them. We also elaborated on that of soil erosion and sediment control measures during construction and how those areas are being protected. The super silt fence or that of a higher caliber, stronger material perimeter protection will be incorporated in addition to all of the other soil erosion and sediment control measures as required by the Soil Conservation District and in accordance with the Borough Ordinance. Regarding the project survey, and the revision as noted, the project survey was previously submitted to the board. Will ensure that the copy as provided is consistent. The revision table, I can't speak to the specificity as it relates to each line item. There are revisions for internal purposes and external purposes, but the survey submitted to the board as dated in the review letters and previously provided is the latest and reflective of the conditions used for design.
Could you elaborate on the CBS loading dock?
Yes, well, I guess I should clarify. I will not be the one to elaborate on the loading dock for CBS. The traffic engineer will get into the loading.
Thank you.
Okay, anyone else from the public? State your name and address. Spell your last name for the record, please.
Frank, L-U-P-O.
Your address?
17 Dean Road. Just a couple questions. How many times did you visit this particular site?
You guys kind of stand here.
How many times have you visited this particular site, the Beefy site?
I've been to the site multiple times.
During those times, was it during the summer, winter, leaves on the trees or leaves off the trees?
What's the relevance of this question?
She references dense vegetation. I'm trying to understand when she made that testimony, based on what? Did she see it during the summer? Did she see it during the winter? Because in the winter, it's not dense. The headlights glare on my house. So that's what I'm trying to understand is the definition of dense vegetation.
I've visited the site multiple times with different conditions. I'm familiar with year-round patterns. To clarify for dense vegetation, you're correct. During the summer, there is lush vegetation where where the deciduous trees drop their leaves. To further clarify, there is a strong concentration of trees. So when the branches do not have vegetation on them, there is still there are tall grasses in addition to those of the trees throughout.
Please keep quiet in the public.
So I'm not sure I got an answer. Were you here in the winter? Because you made an assumption. We'll move on. Demolition plan. In the demolition plan, there's a concrete pad in the upper right-hand corner. And the demolition plan, I'm not sure if it shows a 25-foot spotlight that glares on my back of my house. I just want to know if that's going to be removed during the demolition.
So the concrete pad, my understanding, is by the Tennis and Racket Club with the lighting as it exists today.
I have a picture here, if that works.
We're not going to accept any exhibits, but if you just want to...
Just a clarification,
Engineer's
yeah.
reference, that's fine.
Yeah, for reference, this is the concrete pad is here, the light is here, it's non-shielded, and there's my house, it points in the window. Just want to know if it's being removed.
The lighting that is, the illuminance for the Tennis and Racket Club as it exists today will be removed and it will be replaced.
Technically, that's the King's property. The upper part.
What's
Is it going to be removed?
She just said it was.
Thank you. There's goodwill bins there. In the demolition plan, are they being removed?
The demolition plan doesn't specify the goodwill bins to be removed. The applicant's prepared to work to relocate them.
And the reason why I ask is because of the headlights from the trucks. That is the only buffer we have at this point. Thank you.
My name is Joseph Schmidel, SCHMADEL, 18 Franklin Road. The question I have is with the parking. I appreciate you finding more spaces by creating 90-degree parking spaces. It's going to make things more difficult pulling in and out. Has the lanes been widened? First question.
So the lane width is 24 feet wide.
So it's going to stay the same?
It has increased from the existing lane width.
What is the existing lane width?
So the lane width varies between the angled parking, approximately 20 foot in nature.
So 4 feet more. So it is going to make it more difficult. What is also going to happen is when you have the 90-degree parking spaces, people are going to use it as a two-way lane versus one way. When it's 60-degree, it's obvious that it's one way. When you change that, it's going to be two-way.
Is there a question here, sir?
Are you aware of some of the consequence of making 90-degree parking spaces? Part of that is it'll become a two-way lane versus one way. Curious, was it taken into consideration?
Perhaps that's something for the traffic study expert to answer your question when he gives testimony.
Okay.
Thank you.
Hi, it's Mary Cole, C-O-L-E. I live a couple of houses down at 69 East Main Street. I just have a couple quick questions on the utility part. For the lighting, what law or ordinance or code governs this?
The proposed lighting design is per the borough ordinance, and then industry standards as it relates to typical light levels are in accordance with ISNA.
I wasn't aware Mendham had a lighting ordinance. Is that new?
No.
Okay.
Perhaps our engineer.
Is
We've had a
there-
lighting ordinance.
Is there an ordinance
Yes.
that governs the parking lot?
Yes.
There is? I haven't been able to find it. Okay. So that ordinance, how does that work with regard to the administrative code for parking lot lighting?
I don't understand the question. The administrative code is state law.
Right, and so does the parking lot lighting ordinance that we have, are the restrictions greater than the NJAC?
I am not familiar with the administrative code as it relates to site lighting on properties like this.
Okay. So right now, you don't know that offhand, do you? There's an ordinance that's going to govern the parking lot lights?
Yes.
In Mendham?
Yes.
Okay. I apologize, I didn't. And with regard to, you had cited dark sky, are you looking at any particular regulations with regard to that?
Dark sky is a general description of lights that do not emit light upwards, and if you look at the details of the light fixtures provided, they will say that they are dark sky compliant.
Right, so for example, I guess my question is, let's say the light trespass exceeds the acceptable foot candles. Who would be responsible to enforce that once the lights are turned on?
I think you're supposed to be asking questions of the applicant and her testimony, but I will tell you that it's not a duel at all. I can tell you the way that the site plans work.
DUAL, not like a...
Yeah, no, I understand.
Okay.
I understand. No, the way a site plan works is the specific plans are approved by the board. It is the property owner's responsibility to comply with that site plan. And if they are not in compliance with the site plan, then they're subject to enforcement and other actions as may be appropriate based on what the zoning officer determines.
Okay, and that's...
For example, if all the trees die, they have to be replaced. If any of the trees die, they have to be replaced. Because they're part of the site.
So if in fact there is light trespass, for example, once the lights are turned on, is the borough code enforcer responsible to enforce whatever applicable laws there are?
In the case of a site plan like this, it is routine that before the final certificates of occupancy are issued, my office will go out with a light meter and make sure that the light levels are what they were purported to be on the plan.
Okay, so you're just concerned with the site plan if 3 weeks later, all of a sudden leaves fall and the light trespass is unacceptable, for example, and the foot candles have increased, who would be responsible then to enforce that?
The testimony was that the light levels shown on the plan do not account for any vegetation at all.
Okay, so if there were light trespass, what government entity is responsible to enforce that? Are you the attorney?
Yes. You're talking to them, questioning them now, the engineer or the zoning officer.
The zoning officer will enforce the site plan. My office will ensure that the project is built in accordance with the site.
Okay, and I'm talking post-site plan, I guess, right? Because you keep going back to the site plan.
No, I understand that, but
okay.
If the lights change and the applicant puts in different lights, that's a violation of the site plan. Lights do not increase their intensity over time. In fact, the opposite occurs.
Right. I mean, I'm just talking about going into winter. A couple people have mentioned.
Yeah, you have to hear me for the second time or maybe the third time. The illumination levels shown on the plan account as if there is no foliage, no landscape.
Okay.
None. Zero.
Okay.
You can't get less than that.
And the law that's going to govern that right now is only the Mendham Borough ordinance.
The Mendham Borough ordinance establishes site plan design standards. That applicant has the obligation to design in accordance with those standards and then construct in accordance with those standards. And then they get checked.
All right, thank you.
Thanks.
Frank Zamataro, Z-A-M-M-A-T-A-R-O, representing the Mendham Alliance for Preservation and Conservation, 41 Quarry Lane. I have a bunch of questions. I don't know if you can answer them all today, but I'll kind of read them all. On drainage, is there a name of the system or the style of impervious drainage system? Is there like a specific product name or a style or something that I could research?
The proposed system has the applicability to be a porous pavement or a physical paver. The applicant plans to install a paver. The specificity of it, while it is reviewed and held to the state requirements or their design requirements, not to mention the borough requirements, I know there are some manufacturers related to we haven't identified a specific manufacturer.
Okay.
It will have to be in accordance with the state requirements as they require a certain paver size, opening, and then subsurface material.
Will that manufacturer or that product be publicly disclosed prior to the vote of this board?
The exact material will be held to the state requirements.
Okay, so will it, I'm asking is, will that product or plan specifically be presented to this board prior to a vote?
The exact product, likely not. It's,
Okay, that's
it's
fine.
based on material availability. I can speak
That's
to the
great.
design
No,
that
that's
it will
fine.
have.
That's great. Thank you for answering that question. Next question. Does this product or does this plan for pervious pavers have a load requirement relative to traffic, since the trucks and vehicles will be driving over it?
Yes, and it has been designed for the traffic grading.
Fantastic. How often does the filtering system for the impervious pavers have to be replaced? In other words, what is the life of the impervious drainage system?
So it's a good question, and it's based on a couple elements. That being the vehicular loading, the cyclic loading of the vehicles, not to mention that of what is filling the joints. We heard about the operation and maintenance manual. So the recurrence of inspection that the applicant is going to be held to will help extend the life cycle of the paver system. The exact time frame related to it is related to that of maintenance, not full replacement.
Okay, so we don't have the answer to that question at this time.
The expected lifespan of the paver system will be specific to the loading on it and the site's use.
Okay, so we don't know what the exact life of the pervious paver system that is being suggested or proposed in your plans, how long it would need to be completely replaced or partially replaced.
We know what the applicant is responsible for maintaining and the design requirements.
Thank you.
Your time is up. Yeah, one more quick question.
Well, I have a whole bunch of more other sections, but I can, come up another time if I'm done. Do you have the right to extend somebody's time?
Well, that's not fair to the other people there.
Okay, all right, well, thank you.
Sleepy. Oh, I'm sleepy. Hello. I'm Danny Williams. I live on 1 Heritage Manor Lane, which is Mendham area senior housing. I'm blessed to have lived in Mendham since 1968, and I hope to continue to live here. But my concern is you talked about dumpsters, I guess you would call them, on the west end of this project, correct? On the extreme west side of this project?
We spoke about the trash collection on both the eastern and western side.
Well, my concern is the west because that's where MASH is. And my bedroom window, my balcony, borders right up against the parking lot of King's currently. So I'm envisioning, I'm sorry. I'm envisioning these dumpsters being right outside my window. Visually, not appealing. I know for a fact that the trash is picked up at King's all hours of the night, like in the morning, like say 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning, which I would think is against noise codes, but maybe there isn't any in Mendham. But so I'm just trying to picture if this project succeeds, which I'm amazed that anybody would support it. I mean, how do the residents of Mendham benefit from this project? But going back to the dumpsters, I'm going to be smelling trash, garbage all the time, trucks picking up the trash at, in the middle of the night. I'm already...
Sorry, I need to ask a question. If this is a question period, so if you want to ask about the odors from the dumpster.
Yeah, I mean, how is that not going to impact our, well-being as residents of Mendham? Of MASH, I should say, it's Mendham Senior Housing. And I know a lot of my neighbors are concerned about it too. But I just, go out on my balcony and I'm going to be looking at dumpsters and trucks, all kinds of other negative things. My question is, what do we get from it, from this project, as residents of Mendham? How do we benefit from this project? That's what I want to know.
So the very short answer is it's a constitutional obligation to provide for affordable housing. Sorry,
Yeah, go ahead.
I have to trade with it.
Go ahead.
So just the very short answer is every municipality has a constitutional obligation to provide for their fair share of affordable housing, of which this project is the only project in town which has an allocation for sewer in the zone and is moving forward.
It's fulfilling an obligation. I understand
Fulfilling an
that.
obligation, which is a constitutional obligation. So, but let's get back to the trash, right? You had a question
Yes.
about the trash. Okay. So, I think we showed 2 trash collection containers on the plan. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And where was the one plan left, right?
On the western side.
Plan on the
Yeah,
western
we're on the
side.
west.
Where do we have that located?
So we have that central to the parking area. In relation to the existing dumpsters along that alley today, it is further from the property line. And it will be enclosed.
Okay. This one question.
That's two questions.
How do the residents of Mendham benefit from this project? Other than the housing obligation, I understand that, that's a legal thing. How does it enhance our lives?
So now I have to come back.
Okay,
First of all,
I'm done.
we're asking questions of my engineer. There will be time for closing comments and remarks on this application, at which point I will also provide a closing statement of all the benefits, as will my planner, with regard to the positive and the negative criteria associated with this application. So hold that thought. We will present expert testimony on it. I will provide a closing statement on it. I think we addressed the question regarding the location of the dumpster on the western side. Thank you for coming.
Thank you.
We're going to take one more.
Yeah, this is a quick question. Maria Duprat, Diazin Bailey, you, Peter, Robert, Anna, Thomas, 106 Dean Road. So it's regarding the lights. I totally understand that according to the plan. Sorry, I totally understand that according to the plan, all the lights are going to be compliant with whatever the rules are. The question is, there's some current lights that are not compliant. Are all the current non-compliance lights be brought into compliance with your plan?
Yes, there is a comment. We received feedback from the board engineer related to site lighting, and we'll work with him regarding the proposed lighting throughout the site.
Okay, so all current lights are going to all be made compliant?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, if we keep it to the strict 3 minutes, we can allow 2 more at this point, okay? If there's a couple more people that would like to speak.
Chris Neff, 89 West Main Street in the borough. Thanks. I want to thank you. N-E-F-F. Never enough French friends? Just quick thanks for everyone for coming tonight. I know it's a long night. I hear a lot of, what I'm hearing a lot of is that everything's in accordance. Has there been any thought to doing a little bit more? This is a very sensitive wildlife area, like you're up against. So you mentioned about adding native plants up in the northern part. Why not add native plants around the whole project? Like native pollinator gardens, things like that.
Yes, to clarify, the requirement to the north of the property or in those environmental areas is that they be 100% native. There are native species that are proposed throughout the property elsewhere. Just wanted to clarify that the state requirement is that.
Right, so I'm just asking, I understand the state requirement, you're in accordance and so forth. This is a very sensitive area also to the residents. Why not do more? So that's what I'm asking you. Right? You don't have to answer that to me tonight. But like the lighting, okay? Light pollution is pretty serious, especially among wildlife. I'm going to speak for wildlife. Those who know me, I hike around here quite a bit. It changes the way animals behave, and to a negative degree. There are some endangered species that live right next to your project. Will you consider doing light surveys there and studies to make sure that they are safe? I can also bring up bird strikes. Your building's going to be 5 stories. There will be dead animals around it. So that's why I'm saying, I hear we're all in accordance. Wonderful. Shouldn't we do more? Thank you. Thanks for all coming tonight.
Natalia Bars, 9019 Road.
Please spell your last name.
Barth. Are you personally going to answer a question that gentleman asked you? How will he benefit from it? When you are going to put it in general, how someone will benefit from it. What about his particular question? Would you answer him in the future? Not in general, how this will be beneficial. He asked you a particular question, and you sounded at the end, I will tell you the benefits of this building. Are you planning on asking his question? Thank you.
Sure. If you think providing affordable housing for people in need of that is important, then that's what this project is doing.
No. That's not his question.
But I'm providing an answer to your question.
Of his question, he's going to.
Nice try.
We answered the question. We answered the question, location of the site.
Thank you.
Let's one at a time. Okay, go ahead there.
Well, I think I indicated they're going to be expert planning testimony on the positive and the negative criteria associated with this project. The constitutional implications are clear. I don't need to go into that at this moment. We just have the testimony of the engineer.
I agree with you.
Okay.
For the public's sake, this is going to be many meetings. There's going to be many expert witnesses
Can't answer it.
explaining the positive, negative criteria that Derek was explaining. And maybe some of those answers will come out through those meetings. But at the end, there will be a summary, and they will have to justify the positive and negative criteria before anybody takes a vote.
But specifically, because that question was
That
asked.
maybe
and
was
he
a
brushed it
premature
off.
question at this point.
Thank
Okay.
you.
It's the most important question.
Margaret Burke, B-U-R-K-E, 8 Baca Road, Mendham, New Jersey. I still get stuck on the alleyways that they're now referring to as roads. Now, I would like to know, what is the width of the road on the west side of the property? And I believe that's going to be one way, is that correct?
The width of the drive aisle, the one-way, correct. So it is going to be a one-way. It is today. The direction of travel will be reversed for ingress into the property, and the width of that roadway is approximately 21 feet.
And what is the requirements for the width of a road? I'm assuming they vary, but what would be the width requirement by the state for the width of a road? Like that, there's going to have that much traffic. It's not just a country lane.
It's a good question. I can speak to the ordinance, the requirements as it relates to minimum drive aisles, that of parking, but the question related to the loading of the traffic on that particular drive aisle and the width being satisfactory is really a better question for the testimony of the traffic engineer that will follow me.
Okay, and when you give the width of that alley, you're measuring it from what, the side of the building to, what do you measure?
You're measuring the width a vehicle can traverse the space.
So that's from the exact side of the building. You're not allowing any type of curb or shoulder. You're measuring from the side of the building outward. Is that correct? Because that's the way it is now. It goes
Curb to curb, right?
well door to curb.
Correct.
Okay. And what's the width of the east side?
The east side unobstructed, once the trash is relocated, is 23 feet.
And is that appropriate for a two-way street?
Again, you'll hear traffic testimony related to that, what vehicles are using that roadway, that alleyway, that drive aisle, and the applicability.
And is that a measurement from the side of the building to the curb?
So there is, related to that side of the property, there is a protrusion from the building or an external most point. It's measured from that point to the curb.
From that point to the curb. So are you required to give any allowances there for people using the rear entrances of their commercial businesses? Or are they going to step into traffic?
Again, you'll hear testimony as it relates to the operations, and we've testified this evening as it relates to coordination with the fire department.
Well, as an engineer, are you required to, when you build a road, what's the requirement? How close can you build a road to someone's door?
There are many factors that go into roadway design, that being who is using the roadway, how frequently. Again, the question is better suited for a traffic engineer.
Okay. My other question is, in the northwestern part of the property, where you're going to put in some more drainage, which, you know, you said is an upgrade to what is there now. Well, my understanding is that that area does not flood now. Whatever's there now takes care of whatever rain drainage problem there is. So what I'm asking, are you putting these new drain systems in because this building is so large and is taking up so much soil and so much natural drainage on the property? Is that what's happening?
It's a good question. So we are required, based on the size or how much soil is being disturbed, we're required to meet state requirements. It is not directly related to the building size. We are required to meet what's called reductions for varying storm events. So it's based on the size of the property itself that we are triggering those more restrictive requirements.
Okay, well, in all these years and all the storms that's come by, excuse me, I've lived here 30 years. That's never flooded. Never, ever flooded. And so excuse me, I've sat here for 2.5 hours. So what I would like to know is this building drastically affecting the way the you're changing drastically the way the water flows through that area? And will you really know until the building's built and then we see how the water does naturally flow? It's going to change its route.
The proposed design takes into consideration the building location, the actual reduction in impervious coverage, and where the water is going. So it has been designed to factor in all of those elements, and it holds back more water as part of the state's more conservative planning measures.
Right, and it has to hold back more water because you're building on more land. The land that's with the open land there now does not require any more additional drainage. So because of the building you're putting there, you're creating a system where you have to have drainage. And whatever the requirements are, I get that. But that's the reason that you're putting in the drainage, not to improve our lives or the property. You're putting it in because this building is so big, it needs to have it for drainage.
Are you asking a question?
I'm asking her. I'm saying, is this, everybody here has waited very patiently. And I think Mr. Gary Hart would listen for 2 hours. These people in this community are concerned. And I think we all deserve respect. To cut somebody off at 3 minutes when you originally said 5 is extremely rude. And it's giving the impression that, I don't know, you're not listening. So I am asking her a question. There was a question there. No, I don't remember what it was.
I believe the question related to stormwater requirements, their applicability, why they are. The proposed design itself, independent of how big the lot is reducing the paved surfaces on the property. So independent of having to manage our stormwater, we are improving the paved condition or the natural ground cover on the property.
Excuse me.
Okay.
Paul, could you just maybe explain to people how the state changed the stormwater regulations this past year?
Sure. The The requirement is under the stormwater regulations is that you have to look at the site both before and after construction. In this particular case, or generally speaking, runoff increases as the amount of impervious coverage increases. This is a case where the amount of impervious coverage decreases after the development. So all things just looking at that, one would assume it's less runoff. There are other factors that are involved that you need to run through fairly complex calculations. And what the state requires is that there be reductions in the peak runoff rates for the 2, 10, and 100-year storms. That is the requirement. So the amount of water that runs off the site must be reduced from the existing conditions to the proposed conditions.
Okay, and the proposed conditions are necessary because you're building on a lot of this property. It's naturally being taken care of now. The runoff, the flooding, the storms. On their property, it's naturally taking care of itself. But because you're building on it, you have to provide these other drainage measures. Is that correct?
The proposed stormwater system is required based on, in conjunction with the proposed development.
Okay. All right. Okay. Thank you.
Okay. I'd like to close the public session right now. We're running out of time. We have to vacate this building. Honestly, we can continue this at the next meeting. You can hold your questions, and I'll give everybody the opportunity to follow up at that point. But we do have to vacate this building by 10 o'clock.
Are you going to start the next meeting with questions?
Yes.
So I can ask my question at the next meeting?
At the next meeting, is that appropriate? Yeah, we can do that. We can do that then.
So you'll start with resident questions.
We will
at your
start
next
with follow-up. We're on a time restraint.
I can't ask 2 quick questions. I won't be as long, I promise.
No. Save those questions. And I'm sorry, but there's only so many hours in the day.
On the 24th.
Can I be first in line in the, I mean, seriously.
What's your name?
Amalia Duarte, Duamalia.
It's on the record.
Duarte, and I'm on the Mendham Township Committee.
Thank you. We'll do that out of fairness for the residents. Thank you.
See you next time.
We have Excuse me, but the meeting is still going on, so please sit down. Thank you.
It's all on the plans. It's all on the plans, maybe.
So I don't know the answer to that, but what I'm going to suggest to, and it's nobody has to do it, but if you want to reach out to me to email me any questions that you'd like to have answered, please feel free to do so. And we can start with that at the next hearing. My email is, I'll write it down after. I'm sure it's on the application.
Yeah, but Derek, be sure that any of these questions and responses are on this record. I don't want any private communications between you and the public.
Continue with the
Very good.
Everything has to be done on the public hearing record.
That's no problem. I was just looking to
Here.
answer questions and move the
Yeah, that's
process
fine,
forward.
but
Here are my cards.
Everything has to come back.
Okay. Oh, okay. They'll go through Ms. Smith.
Perfect.
There we go. Even better. Okay.
Okay, so I think we're going to wrap it up here for tonight. And our next meeting is right here on the 24th at 7 p.m. If everybody's listening back there, next week, 24th, at Grace Lutheran Church, 65 East Main Street. And we will continue with these questions then, out of fairness to the public. And I'd like to give everybody an opportunity to speak, but, you know, there's so many hours that we can afford this.
And this application is being carried to that the date just announced without further notice.
I didn't hear that.
That the next meeting will be on September 24th, Tuesday, September 24th, beginning at 7 p.m. And this application will continue on that date without further notice.
The engineer be back.
All right, we have to.
Okay, I'd like to have a motion to adjourn.
Thank you.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye. Mr. Aguirre was the first, second. Mr. Molnar was second. All in favor?
Favor? Okay. Okay, we're adjourned.
Thank you.